I vividly remember discovering semen retention during secondary school at around 16 years old. I had been addicted to this adult content for a few years. I felt obliged to change. Not long after this, I found myself at my first streak of 30 days. I felt unstoppable. I walked around like I owned the place, and I had crackhead-like energy. It wasn't until I spoke with a classmate, however, about the topic. He told me about the increase in testosterone peaking after 5 to 7 days, and he told me there was no real evidence supporting this practice. Well, fast forward to today. Compelling evidence now backs up not only specifically the increase in testosterone after 7 days of abstinence, but more importantly, it highlights the effects that semen retention plays on androgen and androgen receptivity.
So gentlemen, let's discuss androgens and why we should put less emphasis and less focus on our, say, levels of testosterone, although numbers on a sheet, and take into consideration the effects that androgens play on, the likes of masculine gene expression and these characteristics that we're actually looking for when we say we want higher levels of testosterone. We want those masculine characteristics that are going to provide increased muscle mass, increased burning of fat, increased confidence, less anxiety, less stress. Doing hard work actually becomes enjoyable for you. So gentlemen, the primary androgens, these are essentially just hormones including testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, and androstenedione. Males' androgens are responsible for the development of primary and secondary sexual characteristics such as, deepening of the voice, facial and body hair, increased muscle mass, these male characteristics that we're looking for. The androgen receptor is going to play a vital role in how we can actually use this testosterone. We must distinguish between someone who, let's say, has testosterone levels of around 900 and another guy who's got levels around 200. The guy that's got 900, he might have high levels of specifically free-base testosterone that is free-floating and physiologically free to use in cells, and we get those benefits from. He might be constantly sexually fatiguing himself. There is a desensitization of the androgen receptors. High levels of testosterone are not going to be able to be used within the cells because the receptors, the proteins that actually translocate the testosterone molecules into the nucleus to then go on to transcribe genes, promote the expression of these characteristics, these genes that we want. He's not going to be able to do that nearly as effectively as the individual with levels around 200 who has perfect androgen receptivity. More important than just the number, the level of testosterone freebase in the blood. Boys, androgen receptors. The AR is a type of nuclear receptor protein. You don't need to know that. That is activated by the binding of these androgens such as testosterone, dihydrotestosterone. It plays a critical role in mediating the effects of androgens at the cellular level. So these androgens receptors are going to be intracellular, just meaning they're inside of cells. ARs are found in most various tissues of the body with high expression in androgen sensitive tissues. Upper shelf of the male physique, so your traps, your shoulders, your upper chest. And this is why you commonly see bodybuilders that are abusing steroids, that they see large increases in their traps, an extremely high density of androgen receptors in the traps. So cellular localization. Essentially, in the absence of androgens, ARs are primarily located in the cytoplasm, which just means in the cell but not in the nucleus, free floating around the cell, bound to heat shock proteins. Again, you don't need to know this. Upon androgen binding, ARs undergo conformational changes, dissociating from the heat shock proteins and translocating into the nucleus, where the characteristics that we want, those genes, are going to be expressed, such as increased muscle mass, less fat. You get the picture. Testosterone binds to the ARs with moderate affinity. Within cells, T can be converted to DHT, which binds to the ARs with a higher affinity, meaning that essentially the DHT is going to be more effective and stronger, you could say, effects being intensified compared to testosterone. The binding of the androgen to the receptor is going to transcribe, which just means expressing the specific genes that mediate those androgenic effects. This takes place in the cytoplasm and then relocates into the nucleus, where all that genetic information is and where the genes are going to be expressed. So the main function of the androgen receptor is essentially a DNA binding transcription factor that regulates gene expression. What does this mean? Because that is a lot of scientific knowledge, but essentially the androgen receptor is responsible for the binding of the transcription factor, being the androgen, that is going to regulate the gene expression, which is going to regulate expression of increased muscle mass. So it is a DNA binding transcription factor that mediates the expression of these male characteristics that we want. Down here, I've included a little image that I draw myself, hence why it's very non-scientific. However, these are our testosterone molecules here in red, traveling into the cytoplasm. These are our androgen receptors. So the androgen receptor is going to bind to our testosterone and dihydrotestosterone. Is going to then translocate into the nucleus, and then the genes here can be expressed. And why should we continue to abstain after a week if there's no changes at 150 plus increase in testosterone? So sexual fatigue, viewing of adult content, is going to desensitize the androgen receptors. The individual who has high testosterone, if he is constantly sexually fatigued and he is desensitizing his androgen receptors, there's going to be less available androgen receptors for testosterone to bind to, essentially meaning that he cannot express those characteristics that we are looking for. He's not going to be able to express the increase in muscle mass, the facial hair, purely from the result of the lack of androgen receptors to bind to. Increasing your androgen receptors and receptivity rather than increasing your testosterone is going to give you far more benefits. So gentlemen, I hope you took a lot away from this, and I'll catch you in the next one